Howdy, howdy. How's everyone doing? You guys having a nice day? Welcome to the first episode of Let's Discuss, a series that I may or may not continue. Basically, the reason why I'm doing this instead of doing sort of like the normal other videos, honestly, I feel like if I did that for the remake, I don't think I could do it in a different way compared to my video on the original. So I'm like, hey, why not just make a video discussing the differences? And, let me know what you guys think. So, the Dead Space Remake. TLDR? It's fucking fantastic. It's really good. Might as well go and play it. It genuinely, the developers did a fantastic job at remaking it. But as I continue forward, there's gonna be spoilers and all that fun stuff, so yeah. So of course, the first big difference is that Isaac talks now, just like he did in Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3. And if you remember in my video, I said it was a flaw that Isaac did not talk in the original. Honestly, I think this is a great improvement. He's not annoying, he's not constantly talking all the time, he only speaks when someone else is talking to him. It's a lot like how Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 worked. And conversations flow a lot smoother. You feel a lot more proactive playing as Isaac, because a lot of the times he's suggesting, oh, I've got to do this, or I got to do that, that sort of thing. While in the original, you sort of had that problem where, Isaac, go do this, Isaac, pick up my laundry, Isaac, sweep my floors for me. You didn't really feel like a character. And, they got the same voice actor from 2 and 3 for Isaac Clarke, which is pretty cool. It's nice that they brought him back. I enjoy his voice. And he hasn't lost a beat. He's still amazing at this job. Another big difference is in the original, every section of the Ishimura was like a level, right? Like, you'd go into the tram, loading screen, level 2. In this, all of the Ishimura is one giant level. You can go between each area freely. And, oh man, it's so cool. I fucking love it so much. Being able to freely explore every which way, and it makes the tram feel more like a fast travel system. Well, not feel, it is a fast travel system, than a level transition. And with that, they actually added things you can do. There's side quests. Yes, there's side content you can look for. The main side quests are trying to find Nicole, following her trail in the early stages of the outbreak, discovering the origins of the regenerator that Mercer sicks on you, and then finding rig codes to get master clearance, which I'll talk about that later. And they're all really interesting, and it's neat to go through because you get a lot of story beats and a lot of lore. You find out that the hunter was actually Harris, one of the colony members, and you go through what Mercer did to him, and eventually where he's almost pure necromorph at the end, where he's talking and he sounds just like a monster, and it's horrifying. And then you also get the parts with Nicole where she's trying to find a way to save people. You go through her path as she's trying to, stop the marker, even though she eventually fails. It's pretty interesting. You also learn that Nicole and Isaac's last call with each other, because Nicole was on the Ishimura and Isaac was on another planet somewhere. They had a vid call that didn't go very well. Again, spoilers, because they explain a lot more about Nicole and Isaac's relationship. Nicole was the therapist for Isaac's mom, who was a unitologist. She specialized in getting people out of the Church of Unitology, and she was trying to do that with Isaac's mom, and that's sort of how they met and how they got together. But something in Isaac's mom snapped, causing her to kill her father and then commit suicide. And Isaac he blames Nicole in their next call, and then she hangs up on him, calling him an asshole, which understandable, and then, like, he immediately is like, oh shit, I fucked up. He's much more determined to find Nicole, while in the original, because, Isaac didn't have a character, it was just like, hey, player, you care about this person, right? And it's like, not really, honestly. But, what they did here, it's really good, and it actually changes dialogue depending on if you do these quests or not. And you also get, like, pretty good equipment, too. You get a stasis upgrade that does damage over time to necromorphs that are in the field, which is really nice. Helps save ammo. Speaking of that, the weapons and stasis and kinesis have, all been overhauled. In terms of the weapons, they're all a lot of fun to use now. In the original game, I had a lot of problems with, like, the flamethrower, the ripper. I was not a fan of a lot of the guns, but in this game, the flamethrower was really awesome. The ripper was awesome. The force gun. Now when you use the force gun, it'll flay the skin. It's like you deglove, like, a necromorph from their skin. It's fucking metal. Like I said, there's stasis, and the upgrade you can get from that, very useful. I don't know if it's as strong as it was in the original, but it's still really good. And then kinesis. Kinesis is just 100% an upgrade, because you get the mechanics from Dead Space 2 and 3, where you can use blades and pipes and stuff to sort of skewer enemies. And, dead necromorphs, you can pull their arm knives from them and launch them at other necromorphs. If you're really good, you can save a lot of ammo by just using kinesis alone. It's very nice. Another thing they added from Dead Space 2 and 3 is you now fly in 0G instead of doing the I believe I can fly jump from the original game. Overall, an improvement, I think, on that. It feels a lot better to do this than that jump. However, it does make some things a lot easier. For instance, it makes the Leviathan fight in food storage a lot easier, which in the original that fight was already easy, so yeah. Another mechanic, nodes. They got rid of node doors. Yeah. The first time I was playing this, I was still saving one node, for the node door, but they got rid of that. Probably for the best, honestly, because those node doors made the game way too fucking easy. Because all you had to do was save at least one node, and you got a bunch of supplies. And apparently, randomly, you can get, like, really good suit upgrades in them sometimes. The nodes have been replaced with security clearance, so you need to get... So the doors will have, like, a 1 or a 2 or a 3 on them. And you need to go through a certain amount of game to get that security clearance, and then you can come back. This is also the master clearance thing. There are certain containers and other doors that have a star on them, and you need master clearance to get that. To get them, you do the side quest where you get all of the rigs from the top chiefs of each deck in the Ishimura. And then you take those to the bridge and you unlock master access, which gets you access to a lot of stuff, mainly weapon upgrades, which is a new thing in this game. Unlike in the original, where every weapon had, a full set of upgrade paths from the beginning, in the remake, there are nodes that are locked off until you get a specific weapon upgrade. That has a certain effect, too. They add, like, a special node that adds, like, effect. Like the plasma cutter, there's one that adds blades to the front of it that when you punch with it, it'll cause necromorphs to go prone, which is pretty cool. They don't feel that impactful, honestly. It doesn't really feel like they change too much other than giving us more, more damage and more health most of the time. Speaking of that, the game can be, even on hard and even impossible difficulty, the game is pretty easy. The original had the same problem where you can really stock up on supplies and power nodes really easily. And on, like, a single playthrough, you can fully upgrade almost every weapon apart from, like, 2. Like, you can upgrade the suit pretty much to max and most of the weapons, which makes It makes the game a cakewalk, honestly. You'll still die sometimes, of course, if you get unlucky. But yeah, it's impossible is very doable. It's very easy. It's not as hard as you think it would be, I guess. I wish there was a harder difficulty. But who knows, it's on PC. Maybe someone can mod that in. Now, speaking of which, unlike the original game, this PC version isn't nearly as borked. Right? Because the original PC version, you had, like, the shitty mouse look, and you also had the continue bug. Oh, God. Fucking pain. Let's move on to the characters, because they've done some interesting things here. Hammond, for instance. Hammond, him in the original, he was very stoic, and, his voice was great, right? But he kind of stood out because he never seemed to go crazy from the marker, and he didn't really have much of a personality. Here, they do give him a bit more of a personality, right? They added the red shirts in the Kellyan personalities. They gave names, Chen and Johnson. And when they die, Hammond is affected by that. Those were his men under his command, and he lost them, which it would affect him. And that's sort of the structure of how the marker starts to get in his head, because the marker never really gets in his head in the original, which I thought it was interesting. However, something about his delivery in this game, it doesn't feel right. I think it's just the voice is not as commanding or imposing as the original. His death is a lot sillier. It's almost impactful, but then he, explodes like a fucking Looney Tunes character, and it kind of deflates it for me. He dies in the Valor like in the original, but this time, he gets stabbed by a necromorph who used to be Chen, one of the men under his command. And, it's like, oh my god, that's, kind of impactful. But while he's stabbed, Hammond, pushes him into the reactor core, the thing you need to grab to fix the escape shuttle. And they both, explode. And, it made me laugh, because it was so crazy. So I'm kind of mixed on Hammond, but I think they mostly did a good job. Kendra, what they did with her is fantastic, right? Because in the first game, she was nothing but super aggro all the time. She was a bitch, and when, she betrayed Isaac, it was like, okay, yeah, of course she was gonna fucking do that. She's a lot more subtle. A lot of the things that, when you're having the video calls with her, a lot of things are in her facial expressions and her inflection. It's really good. If this was the first time I ever played Dead Space, I would not be able to tell that Kendra was going to betray you or that she was like a secret agent. While in the original game, it was obvious she was up to some bullshit, right? Mercer in this one, I think, is an improvement as well. He wasn't bad in the original, but he was kind of a cartoon character in the original, while in this, he's still cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but he has more of a motivation than just, necromorph's good. There are actually sections where, in the original, it was you only met Mercer behind, a glass wall, while in this one, you actually can meet him up front, and he uses, stasis on you, and he walks around you. Much more imposing, and I think it was done much better. And along with the audio logs, like I said, of the quest where you find about Harris, just the things he does that man, it's fucking gruesome, right? Then we have Nicole. I liked what they did with Nicole. It made her seem a lot more competent, a lot more proactive in, what was going on, because we actually saw her trying to help people, as a doctor would in her position. It was nice, and we got to sort of see why someone like Isaac would, have feelings for Nicole. Makes a lot of sense. They also added Elizabeth Cross and Jacob Temple. They have bigger roles too. Let's start with Jacob Temple, because Elizabeth Cross can come in a bit later. Jacob Temple, we see him be a bit more proactive. And, oh my god, his death in this is fucking horrific, because instead of, him just being tied up and, Mercer driving a stake through his head, apparently he was building something for Mercer, right? Mercer had him build something, not sure quite what. When he outlives his usefulness, Mercer stasis him and then shoots him in the head with a nail gun. So he's like dying in slow motion, and it's just like, oh my god, he got done dirty. But then Elizabeth Cross. So in the original, she was dead with Jacob. However, she survives till the end of the game in this. If you remember in my video, I complain about how the Nicole ghost is able to like push buttons and do stuff in the original when it doesn't really make sense, right? You have that room with that pit where you have to help Nicole. You have to protect her from the necromorphs. And it's like, wait, how did Nicole do that if she was a ghost? Well, they made it so that it wasn't a ghost. There was actually a person there doing that stuff. It was Elizabeth Cross. And the marker was making you think it was Nicole. And it was sort of doing the same thing to her, where she saw you as Jacob. So you got this, like, double mindfuck going on. Oh, and then we have Dr. Kine. He's fine. He's not bad. I like some of the things they do with him. They make his delusions with Amelia a lot more present. But I'm sorry, man. That voice, the voice of the original Kine was just so much better. I'm sorry to this voice actor. It just doesn't do it for me. Oh, speaking of Mercer, a contention that some people might have is how Mercer dies in this game. See, in the original, he gives himself up to one of the pterodactyls to be infected, and if you're fast enough, you can kill the infector and him fast enough before he fully turns. But in this one, after you have the second boss fight with the Regenerator, he gets killed in a cutscene by a tentacle. It's kind of lame, honestly, because we didn't get to do it ourselves. But I think that's kind of the point, because throughout the game, you see Mercer is trying to use the marker as a way to escape death, basically. He thinks it's the key to heaven. Convergence is. And, then he dies unceremoniously without convergence happening. So, I think that's supposed to be the point, was that Mercer, he thought he understood the marker, but he was wrong in the end. I can dig it. I still wish I could put a plasma cutter bolt through his head, but let's see what. They removed the turret They removed that shitty turret section. Fucking yay! The new section it sort of combines the trench run of the original with shooting it. Basically, you have to aim the turrets manually and train them while on the outside of the ship. It's just more fun, honestly. Than just sitting on the turret. It's more like you're training an AI than doing it yourself, and the AI just working. Oh, the mini games from the original come back, sort of. On the Valor, they have that shooting range, but this time they change it to where enemies drop down while you're doing it, and you kill all the enemies, and all of the reward lockers open up anyway, which is interesting. Because the other minigame, Zero G Basketball, they pretty much keep. Even though the Zero G mechanics are a lot better, this is still just really boring because now instead of like jumping from, different platforms, you're just floating in the air, just shooting the basketball into the thing. Honestly, I don't see why they kept that in. And another thing I'm not a fan of them keeping in is the Valor section. It pretty much has the same problem of the original. It makes no sense that one necromorph was able to take out an entire ship of trained military personnel who was there to fuck up necromorphs, you know what I mean? I still think they should have cut that. It was not worth to keep that in my humble opinion. They did add something though. In New Game Plus, there are 12 collectible marker shards you can get, and if you collect them all by the end of the game, you get a secret ending, which is interesting, because the secret ending basically, instead of Isaac turning off the all of the lights on the ship and Nicole goes screaming in his face, we see the ship covered in the same marker graffiti that we saw in the Ishimura. And Isaac, he's gone full cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He still thinks Nicole is there. And he's, smiling wide like a fucking crazy person, talking about how he has something to build. Which I think is supposed to ease into Dead Space 2 a bit easier. Because when Dead Space 1 was made, they didn't know they were going to have a sequel or where the story was going. So there was kind of a disconnect between the two games, and this ending sort of bridges that gap, which is nice. As for performance, for me it was pretty good. However, I did have some stuttering, some soft locks, and some crashes. However, I am playing on Linux, so I don't know if that's what caused it. I have seen some other people who were playing on Windows have some gnarly bugs, like opening an elevator and just the fucking void appears. For the most part, it seems people have a generally good time with it. It seems to be pretty stable. Honestly, I definitely recommend this. Definitely recommend if, you know someone who's never played Dead Space before, or if you've never played Dead Space before, pick this up and play it. And then I'd say go back to the original. They're both fantastic, but I think the remake is a general improvement to the original in every way. So, yeah, that was the first episode of Let's Discuss. I hope you guys liked it, and have a good night.